Welcome everybody. This is the EV charger installation video. I wanted to reference the planning video, which I believe you should watch before this one so you can gather your assessment to see if your house, your location, or your skill set is capable of doing this, as well as referencing your budget, your goals, etc. That should help you determine if this is something that you can do, should do, or want to do. That being said, if you're just here to check out the work behind this particular installation for the BMW iX 2023 and the charger running across the garage, which is a little more elaborate than usual, great. Let's get down to it. Here's what the inside panel looks like. It will probably start about here where the electrical box cuts off. I'm going to very carefully cut into this, very carefully. I'm going to use a wire sensor to try to see where the voltage lines are running. They're probably all over. For this particular one, you just lift up. It looks like it has holes to secure it in, but don't. Now, this you should usually use a rubber glove or turn off the power to the house. Everyone should turn off the main breaker to the house. Now, keep in mind, when you do turn off the main breaker to the house, the two ports underneath running to the meter here will actually be coming from the transformer in the street. So these will still be live if you touch those regardless. You can use a multimeter to test that here if you want, but usually you want to work with one hand and have a rubberized glove, etc., etc. So these are kind of basic things. Just be really careful when you open these up. Now, what you can see here is that these three breakers, these are square D, so you want to match the same brand with the same brand panel you have. And oftentimes you can look at the inner side of it or even on the front and it will tell you what kind of panel it is. You can look it up and see which ones are compatible. Sometimes manufacturers buy other ones out and you'll need those labeled ones. Sometimes they're universal between 2 or 3 manufacturers. These here are arc type breakers, which means they can sense slow drains and whatnot and throw themselves. The other options you have are to change out one of these for something like this. I think I paid $35 and what I have is a double 15. It looks like this, so 15 on each end, and in the middle will be 50. Now the 50 will be wired to the new receptacle and the double 15 will replace these two right here. Now it isn't an arc fault breaker, which I would pay the excess if I could find one, but I could not. But it will be like this. You can do this at your own discretion, but keep that in mind, what you want to change and what you don't want to change. The risk here is minimal, although California state code or other state codes have all kinds of laws and whatnot of what you can use. I believe now most receptacles have to have GFCI protection, which adds another $200 to what would normally be a $20 breaker. So something like that. Anyhow, you look up above here and you can see that those two blue ones are already adapters. And if you look really closely right there, you can see the knockouts right here. Another interesting thing on this panel is that a lot of the bars have the neutral and the ground on the same. Now here on the right you see the grounding bar. There are stripped naked wires and there are green wires. On the left you see all white. Those are the neutral wires. So this one you do have to keep them separated, and if you can, try to put your wires into open ones. Don't double them up. If you absolutely must, you can, but try not to double them up. First what I did is I went outside and I measured the distance from the floor to the top of the breaker box. You want to do that or measure the distance of wherever you're going to cut through the wall. I have another tool that allows me to scan, but I don't have it on hand. All it's sensing is 2 studs on each side, possibly just a metal. Another thing you can try is a multimeter. You can try a multimeter. If you turn it here to NCV, assuming your multimeter has non-contact voltage, it may have a little antenna. Most new ones, even the $20 ones on Amazon have it. They're quite good, unless you're doing really accurate, tiny, minuscule things. NCV here, and you can just test it by holding it to an outlet. There's an L, I'm guessing for low, a red for high. So in this particular model, this has lights on top, low, medium, high. It's a low signal here, right where the line sits. I'm going to try using this, never used it before, multi-tool. I only have one blade, oscillating multi-tool, Milwaukee, fuel of course. If you get Milwaukee, just pay the extra and get the fuel. Eye protection, yeah, sufficient eye protection, but you know. That was like slicing butter with a knife. It's even got a light. God, I love Milwaukee. I just love Milwaukee. They need to hire me. I shall do their marketing because it's not the best. You can probe with something plastic or whatnot. A ton of cables there, I was right, but they are further back. Here's the electrical. You can see it's pushed back and stapled, but your situation may not have it set up so well. If you look at the mark here, I was quite a ways above it, but I did that on purpose just to be safe because I can cut this hole bigger and fill it. Right there you can see the knockouts. Now, I'm going to attempt to drill a hole right here as close to the drywall as I can. See, in a typical setup in the garage, you can just punch out right there and run your outlet right down below and save a lot of money on wiring and hassle. And just poke through the wall here. That's very easy to do. This is the same exact thing, it's just running wire. Some people don't even have their breaker this close and it's, you know, in the basement or something. That's a lot more work, but each situation will be different. So let's get started on what's left. I cut out 12 inches down because there are panels that are 12 by 12. Unfortunately here, these are 1/2 inch, the ones that are accessible. The 3/4 inch, this panel looks like it has 1 inch, 2 3/4, and 1/2 inch in the middle, 2 more 3/4 inch, and then a 1 inch, which looks to have an even bigger one to maybe 1.5 inch. Anyhow, when you look at the panel from the inside, as I showed earlier, you can see the blue ones just sit there. I believe these are glued to this electrical panel. Due to the limitations inside here, I'm going to run something like this. And these are just 2 bends. These are $1.50 each. Now, they do sell direct 90-degree bends. Now, and if you're working with super small gauge wiring, I would say 14 or above, it's already going to be hard enough to run through this. So if you can avoid those 90-degree bends, I suggest doing it. It'll basically look like this in the end result. And I'll push it as close to the wall as I can get. Turn off the electricity. Make sure that the panel pop out is clear on the inside, which I did. There's usually a spot weld on these that you can think. Okay. So I just tapped it on the edge where I figured the spot weld wasn't. That's good enough. Use the screwdriver to twist. In fact, you have even more leverage. You can just keep twisting it back and forth until it falls off. Grab with the pliers in there, twist, success. There's the hole, and here's the 1 inch adapter to 3/4 pipe. It's gonna sit something just like that. You can see the gray one coming through. What I'm doing here is I put the bend inside of the adapter all the way, and I'm just going to measure that. You can even use a level to keep it straight, and go to this side of the wall and start drilling there. Here I have a Milwaukee bimetal hole saw set. I got this for $37 on clearance. It was insane. Supposedly marked at $140 or something. Of course, they don't sell it at that. Actually, for Milwaukee, maybe they do. Anyhow, I wasn't sure which size outer diameter would fit. Yeah, that should work. So 1 1/4 is pretty good size. Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna put this in there and go drill. Got the dot there and the dot there where I'm gonna start the drill. I'm gonna put the middle of that right on the dot and go. I've had to drill out this hole at another angle. So what I did is I drilled the hole, instead of going here 90 degrees, I angled it like this. So it's angled inwards. Because this is recessed, I could have tried to use 40-degree bends, 45-degree bends and go around that board and go to the top, but I would have had to remove so much drywall that this just seemed like the best option. This one is a plain edge on both sides because part of it's going to go into a 1 inch to 3/4 inch reducer, which will be glued in, and then the part coming out is going to go to this left bend. I really hate running wires through this, but this should be on the shorter end of it, and it's just one, but it's essentially going to sit like this. If I were to use 2 of these 90-degree bends, it sticks out very far from the wall. You could do that, and you could use a 2x4 to brace it behind and then just bolt it to the 2x4 all the way up, but I'm trying to make this as clean as possible. Here I have it in there, and I have it angled the best I can do. I'm gonna measure this space between here, make a little mark, and then cut the pipe to make this more flush against the wall. These plain bends, at least the ones I could find, are schedule 80, so they're thicker. This should be even more fun to run through. Anyhow, I marked about 3/4 of an inch. I do have a Sawzall, but I'm gonna use these pipe cutters. Notice I'm holding this in because sometimes if you don't hold the pressure on the beginning ones, it kind of slides out. So I'm gonna cut nice and straight and it's gonna fall, so I'm gonna try to catch it. One more click should do. Now you can see that it's pretty close to perfect. It's gonna adjust a bit on the inside, but this is really close to the wall, so I wanted to get it right here as best I could. Now you're gonna do the tedious part. First, plan out which sides are gonna be male and female, or if you have all male, you're gonna use all couplers, which I'll show. So next, I'm gonna need to cut a piece of pipe. I bought 10-foot pipes. Roughly put this here with a little bit of space from the top so I can make sure that I have enough room for these flared out edges here. In this case, it may be better to use metric because metric is so much easier to do fine details. Right here, you can see that part on the bottom there, that's where I'll be measuring to. So you wanna measure to the part where your pipe's actually gonna fit, and do a little excess if you have to, because you can always cut more off, but you can't put more back, you know? If worst case, you'll have to cut another piece in half and use 2 couplers. Now you're gonna track out your entire thing, and I'll go along that and show my progress, but you're just gonna measure and cut, measure and cut. So you can see that it's just lining up and I'm test fitting. Now keep in mind that the pieces you cut and whatnot, you'll have to run each one through like a bead on a strand when you run the wire through. The wire running is the worst part. Here's a coupler, 3/4 inch. Just do this. You'll want to account for those. And then you'll account for this coming off and either going onto the flared end of the next corner or flipping it again and using a coupler, your preference. This is the quick unboxing of the BMW wall kit for the flexible fast charger. You pull it apart and you get 3 items. You get the hanger, which it's good quality. It's gotta be. This cable's heavy. It's pretty stiff. It feels coated. It's nice. You get the bracket hanger, so excuse me, 4 parts, but 2 of them are in the same thing. This is plastic and feels cheap. And these screws. Comes with 1, 2, 3, 6 large wood screws and 2 tiny connecting screws. 50 bucks. If you do your homework, you can find it for maybe $42 just to hang this big thing. There's what the plug adapter looks like. This came with the iX 2023 model at least. I don't know if they all come with this. I can put the part number to this, but this is what it will look like. 4-pronged. And here's the charger part that connects to the car. Okay, so to release it, you just kind of twist slightly to the left about 1/8 of a turn. And it will lock in. You want to account for this distance when you're hanging the wall hanger and when you're running the pipe. I'm going to try to do the maximum amount of distance for this cable. I highly doubt it will reach the other side, but someday in the future, you can put an adapter on this for other cars. A smaller car where it can run right over the roof or something similar, because this is a long cable, but I don't think it's long enough to run around the other side for the iX. We'll see. And then try to put this about the height of the gas tank where it actually charges. Gas tank door where the electrical outlet is. There is no gas. I just made a revelation. This is only able to plug into this adapter one way. This is meant to hang here. You buy the hanger to hang this here, and the front has lights to show you which way to, or show you signals. Now, this can only plug into the wall this way, obviously. No one's gonna have a curved outlet or something. It locks in, and that's how it sits. So when you plug this into the wall, say the wall is facing that way, this faces outwards. And this is far too thick, and it's not advised to even try twisting this. No way you can twist it 180. The cable's reversed, so this should be flipped completely, or the plug and vice versa, because, see, I'll just gently try to twist it. I can't, I mean, there's just too much force, and I would just be doing harm to this. Here's the mounting point area. Now, I was initially going to mount the box down here, but as I want to reference, this cable's very heavy, very stiff, and this whole setup needs to be aligned really correctly. Now, with BMW's reversed defect here, I did find a way to bend the plug. and I'll show you. But what you want to do is line up the box where the mount is going to go. Assume that the plug will be corrected. This is quite heavy, so I put the box here and I let this dangle down, and I measured where the hanger is going to sit, somewhere around here. And then I lined up the plate below it. Now, the box here, this isn't gonna twist well, but if you do this, it works perfectly. The plug here. Now, when you mount it in the 2-gang outlet box up there, you can see that the mounting points are right here and right here. So it can either sit like this or like this. It is true that you can just simply turn the outlet box too. It's up to you. The absolute correct way, if you look at the writing on the front, is all facing upwards. That's the absolute correct direction, but there really is no correct direction. And you can always take the box off and remount anything any way you want. I'm now going to take the plate and the screws with it, which are actually 5mm hex bolts. And I use the level. So I put it here where I thought. I used the level to line it up. I marked, I pre-drilled. It's over slightly more than I wanted because there's a stud here. You probably could use wall anchors, but I would wager this whole unit probably weighs maybe around 20 pounds. The way everything's oriented, it's just gonna have to work like this. I'm gonna use the top of this, let some pressure sit there instead of letting it hang from the conduit pipe. You wanna kind of figure out where your box wants to go. I'm gonna actually move it slightly to the left here to give a little more free tension on that. So you just flip it around, try to line up those 2 holes somewhere right there, and then try to use the level on the connector later. So just estimate where they're at and then mark, and you can even pre-drill a little bit with a screw or a drill bit to make it easier to start. Now that I have that aligned, you're going to want to work with the box. So you're going to want to pay attention to how this works. There's a stopper on top and it slides in this way. So this part mounts to the back of the charger box and this part mounts to the wall. Now you can use this as a reference guide when marking the screws for the charger box. So I roughly marked it here. It's about that distance. So just put this here, and that's a pretty safe distance, and then I'll just level it and then mark it. Screw this the right direction. This little tiny screws in the kit go through here, and this sits on the box, and then it will just mount up and down whenever you need it. I finished mounting this plate. You can use drywall anchors. This one's going to be lighter than this one. They're both, heavy enough, but the cable feels a bit heavier than this itself. Here's the unit test fitted, sitting there ready to go. And the pipe is all aligned and cut and ready to go. It's pre-cut and measured. It's going to be hung on the roof with hangers, not near the garage door, but you can see where it's at, and it's ready to go. Now I'm going to start running the wire, the absolute worst part of the job. Here are my 4 wires, 50-foot THHN, which is stranded, white, red, green, and black. 6 gauge. This is not going to be fun to run, but we're going to start running it through. I've taken off each piece and I'm going to run them one by one like beads on the string. Here I tape the end, and I have unraveled these and walked them out all the way through the entire house. It helps to have someone on the other end holding tension on them to try to keep them separate, but this is the best method. So unroll all of them and then work from there. And then what you do is just take a piece, thread it through, and just slowly make your way all the way to the end. But I'm going to put about 3 to 4 excess feet in the box, so you got to account for that too. The breaker box as well have the excess, and then the rest that I'll be cutting off will have the end outside of the 2-gang outlet box. A couple of tips here. You want to separate every piece, especially turns, and do them themselves. I ran one of the straight pipes all the way to the end, and that kind of helped straighten out the cords and keep them straight along the way. So you can do that in piece by piece, and you can actually leave a little distance between each piece in order to help keep them untangled and straight the entire time. Here, and it looks like a mess, but it's actually pretty straight. And then running it through, and I tied it to a chair to keep pressure on one end, and this is what's going to go into the gang box. Make sure you have enough left here to wire in that box. This is plenty. Do one piece at a time, and it helps to push the wiring through instead of pulling the pipe up on the wiring, it will be much easier for you. Here you can see the pieces ran along and they're spaced out. There's the excess for the back. Just to give you an idea of the gluing, you can take a paper towel, you can take alcohol if you really want to be thorough. Just wipe the outside. This is medium grade PVC cement. I keep doing that. So, wipe it off. Give it a nice cover on the outside. And bring it together. Push on. Quarter turn. This one's going to be indoor too, not so much outdoor. It's in a garage, so it doesn't have to be perfectly sealed. But you can also do a ring around the edge here too. It dries quick, so just keep that in mind. And that's it. You're going to do that piece by piece as you go along. Here you can see the glue on the end, and then I left these gaps for the entire thing, and it's ran all the way through. If you have any parts where you shear it a little bit, even just the clear coat on top, you can run a piece of tape through, but wait till you get all the pipes past it before you run the tape. And there it is. The only thing I have left to run it through is that and the breaker box, and this is the worst part. For these type here, just run one end through first and connect it down to your thing, and then loop it back and run it through there. So much easier than trying to do that the entire time. Now I'll take this end here and run it through here. Much easier. Before I finish up there, I'm going to start running it into the box here. I put one screw here just to hold it temporarily, but I can always remove this and if I need to do it. I'm going to run it up here. I'm going to bolt on the two longest parts across the garage door to start, and then we'll go from there. Here we are. I'm on the last leg of gluing it. I've been gluing it piece by piece, and I have this hanging here. Make sure that you note the XYZ angles of your corners before you glue them and have something holding them. I'm using the hangers with half a screw to hold them. I ran the wiring through here and through the inside port, and you can see here I have well over the excess length. 2 to 4 feet is recommended, and then that's there, and then I'll be wiring it into the breaker. This little piece right here and that took about an hour just to thread the wire through. So if you don't have to use one of these, do not use them. They're so terrible. Reiko 696. I will put a link in the description. This is a Reiko something else. This is the one, if you go on Amazon, this will be recommended by everybody. This will be in the stores, recommendations, everything for the plug. 2 things you have to note when you look for this. One is that these line up. This is 3 mounting holes. So the outer ones on here mount up. Problem is, the depth is a joke. And the only way, I should state this, the only way you might be able to do this with 6 gauge THHN stranded wiring that I have is punching a hole in the side, running it here, actually probably not even on the side with the ground, and then trying to loop it up very tightly. And that's after cutting off the adapter that I sliced off already. It's just not going to work. Now, ideally, you want one that's got the depth. So now, the punched hole from the top will come in here, here. It doesn't really matter for me. And now the wiring is going to come down behind this. And then I have lots of space to loop it around in there and have some excess. So now I can actually pull this out with whatever length is going to be left and fit it in there. This should be the recommendation from the get-go. It's amazing that it was so hard to find. It says 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. Funny thing is that when you look at all the specs, everywhere you look for this, it doesn't list this as 4 inches. It listed as 3.5 by 3.5. This one's listed as 4, but they're pretty much identical. So you really got to take everything you read online with a grain of salt. I think we all know that by now. And the other good thing is the special plate that you have to order. You can get circular plates in Home Depot or Lowe's, but they're for dryer plugs, similar looking, but they will not fit, just ever so slightly. Now you could get one of those, they're about $2 or $3, and you could try, if you had a big enough sort of saw or file, to file it out a little bit, but this one was $15, something ridiculous. I think it was $15. I'll put a link, but it is the necessity. This white layer comes off. It's to protect it. You can see this one actually fits over here. and the holes will align here. For my particular setup, the line is going to curve over the top like this. So this one's going to have to be punched out in the back right there. It's a good thing to note. Make sure that the mounting holes for the plug itself are on the top. So I'll be knocking out the top right. Got the top right one knocked out. I will be threading through the wire. Now the top I have not glued in yet still, but I'm gonna just make sure that one last time this all works before I glue that in. And it looks to be seated. Got that glued on. This has a little bit of flex here. Make sure you don't forget to put your ring on before you put the outlet on. So run the ring through. You can see there that the ring is on. I'm going to tighten it with a flat head. You can use pretty much anything, but those little notches on the side allow a flat head to kind of push it while you hold the box. I have this 20-pack of 3/4 inch conduit clamps, and I also bought some polymer coated number 8 by 1 1/4 inch, but you can use drywall screws. These are rather short, but I wanted to keep them short. The more hangers you use, the more stability you'll have. This is ran. I'm going to put the mounting brackets, so that's lined up for the most part. You can see here there's a gap. You can put a piece of something here and the clamps, and you can clamp it with the space just to keep it nice and tight, which I will probably do here. Just wanted to show that I cut this down to make it more aesthetically pleasing. Just wedge it behind there, cut a piece, slide it down till it wedges, and then find a 2x4, and you can use slightly longer screws. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this box here and wire this in, so this is all ready to go before I wire in the breaker. This is technically the direction of it facing upwards, but I'm going to mount it like this. It is irrelevant how you mount it. The opening here will be your green wire. If you look on the back, it actually says green. That's your ground. White will be your neutral right here. And the XX and the YY can either be red or black. It doesn't matter which is which on which side. You're going to cut the length that you'll think will fit in the box. You're going to strip it down, and then you're going to put it in these clamps here. And then you're going to put an Allen wrench here, and you're going to tighten it down until it's tight. And you're going to give it a tug to make sure it doesn't pop out. I did buy these for $20 because they say they strip 6-gauge wire. We'll see if that's true or not. If not, you will have to use needle nose pliers and very gently do it around to extract it so you don't cut wires. I have it wrapped looped once in the back. You must account for the ground wire coming to the bottom right. It won't sit on the top like the other 3. So the red, black, and white will sit on top. The green will sit right there. Try to account for that. I'm going to cut the wires probably right here so they have that extra loop so that it pulls out. These are insanely stiff. You will understand if you use these. I'm going to cut the red, white, and black for now. I'm going to pull the length out, and I'm going to strip them. To deal with the green, I'm going to assume it comes to maybe there, so I'm going to cut it a little lower. Just try to gauge the depth of the ports. These are surprisingly deep. And I'm stripping about 1/2 inch or 1.5 centimeters. These require a 3/16 Allen wrench, not a 4.5 millimeter, 3/16. Very close, and even though it felt right, not gonna work. Going to insert the ground. You pretty much tighten these to a point where you really can't turn it anymore. Use something like this, because something with an angle will have even more torque, so you don't do anything that you don't need to do, but you can just tug it, you'll realize it's pretty good. I'll put the black right here. Because of the wire order, it may just work better. Again, I'm just gonna loosen it until the copper drops down. These are so not fun to work with. Next we have white. Okay. And lastly, the red. XX and YY can just be any ungrounded circuit. The other box had holes in the back to do this from the back, but I still just don't see how someone would want to do that when this box right here is the same price. Typically you would screw these in first, but because I've been messing with this all day trying to get the wiring right, I didn't do it. So now I'm going to put these screws in the back of the box into the drywall. Just to show you right here, these screws right here and here are for the box. These four were the holes for the Allen wrench. So this box has two, this box has two. I recommend putting into a stud, which one of these will hit a stud. I've already tested it, but if not, use wall anchors. You may have to use an extender to extend your already extended bit. That one's good. No mas. Notice this one's sticking out a little bit. I could have cut this a little shorter, but these are pretty close to in, which is good. It should be fine for purposes. If it were the red or black, I'd worry about it more, but it should be okay. Now the fun part, trying to bend this in carefully. So if you curve it once, you'll want you want them to come down, so this thing's sitting right here. If you look, it's about 2 inches too high, so I think I'm going to take a little more wire off. Now I feel like it's very close, fortunately, so I'm going to bend these down one by one. Alright, yeah, 10 inches is better. Hell, you could probably even go 8. Okay, just double check the ports. Red and black tucked in as best as possible. You're going to buy something that looks like this, and you're going to remove the nut. So I just stripped a little piece off each one carefully with the really good strippers that I got specifically for 6 gauge. Once you have it cut around the bottom, you can gently cut like this without hitting the wires, so it just comes right off. I cut a piece big enough so these two sort of mash like this. You insert the wires like this, make sure that the bar is facing downwards on your nut, thread it on there. So I'll tighten it down. Don't over tighten it because these are copper, and if you could see this one, I barely over tightened that one and it broke, but I got a big set. Now a couple things I wanted to mention is that I'm going to still surround this with electrical tape. I know you can have bare wire, but the fact that these are so close inside there, just to be safe so it doesn't short out all the time if they don't actually break out, then I'm going to just wrap this because it's so tight in there that this may somehow contact this. Probably not, but just in case. I didn't test this, and I could have by using a multimeter. This may actually have a built-in sort of ground, so this plate, when it's connected to this box, may actually stop a ground fault. I didn't look this up, but if not, this is still a really good thing to do, so just do it anyways. I mean, it was quick, easy, cheap, and I'll link these in the description. Here's the final product. Not over tightened, just did it till it's snug. You can pull this extra one down, you'll see that it's nice and tight. Make sure the two are contacting very well. And I'm just gonna wrap it with a little bit of tape and stuff this back in there. Locked it in with some high temp tape. Notice how the ground wire is on the bottom here. I also put this on the bottom right of the box, so they're very near each other. And then I put about 10 inches of wire here, and I'm gonna tuck it in as well and use the nut and bolt. Now, if the power wire happens to come out while it's live and hits the box throw the breaker instead of electrifying the box if someone touches it. So this is a good thing to do, and I recommend doing this right off the bat. A lot of you, if not all of you, will order this plug online. It's dynamic between $80 to $100, sometimes more. Mine came open and it had no screws. I had to order another one after contacting the manufacturer, which they are absolutely terrible at replying. Yours should come with 2 bags of these screws. Each bag will have just 2 screws, and they'll be taped or sitting on the inside. So make sure you have these screws. I recommend using hand tools on this because you can strip these out. You can use power tools once it's threaded, just don't tighten it with power tools. So this one's threaded, for example. Just gonna push it in with the power tool, but I'm not going to tighten it. Also, make sure the orientation of your plug is correct. Now that those are seated, I'm going to do it by hand. These don't need to be overly tightened. They're very cheesy screws. Already 2 of them kind of stripped out almost. Power off. You can use a multimeter to verify, which is always a pretty decent idea. These 2 on the bottom will still have charge. Touch the black to the ground, and touch one of these to the power. No voltage, no voltage. If you touch down here, 240 volts. So the studs on the bottom and that plate are still live, so you've got to be very careful not to touch those. So here's the breaker I'm working with. Screw for the first one. Remove the line. Alright, these have pigtails because they are AFCI breakers. And it's the best to replace AFCI breakers with arc fault same type breakers. Unfortunately, they do not make tandem arc fault breakers for square D that I can find in existence, and it is common practice for electricians to replace AFCI breakers all the time with regular breakers, so I am leaving it as is for now. On the arc fault breakers, you'll have the neutral line going into the back as a double line, and then coming out here, this pigtail will go to the neutral bar. So you'll just basically move this neutral line to the neutral bar like it would be on all the other circuits. Here's the replacement tandem 1550. So the 2 outer posts will be to the original 15s. These and the 2 inner posts will go to the red and black wire on the EV plug. The white wire will go to the neutral bar on the left, and the green wire will go to the ground bar on the right on their own ports. It's that simple, and you just plug it in. I'm going to attempt to do 1 loop up for excess, but I don't know if it's actually going to work out or not. So I'm going to just attempt that at first and cut it like so. I'm going to start with the green, the ground, because it's on the right and closest to where I did it. So let's see if these actually... Klein tools for the win. Klein tools can strip 6-gauge wire stranded without fraying it. Awesome. Alright, now let's find an open spot on the bar here. 2 down, 2 to go. So I looped the ground a little bit, and I had to remove one of the breakers here just to access a clear path for the neutral. But the neutral's in the neutral bar, the ground's in the ground bar, and I got 2 left. Strip them out. Wow, these wire cutters are amazing. These ones are going to go in the center. I cut them really short because they only need this much length to go in there. So it's in the slot there. It's fully seated. I'm going to tighten it. That's it. Tug on it. It's good to go. Inside here they have these little things, and they can slide upwards. You don't want to put it under that. You want to make sure it goes inside, in between that, in between the screw plate that lifts and that bottom housing that lifts up. Alright, now I'm going to put the last 15 amp. These are the 2 15 amp ones. Same scenario on these. Make sure it goes in that little C tray. Good. And then I will do the other one. Alright. This breaker is good to go. Now I'm going to attempt to bend these ridiculously hard angles and fit this in. Here is the final product. I did a little bit of excess and tucked it as best I could, and you can see the green and the white wire. Alright, onto the plug. This thing is all set. You can test it now or put the cover plate on. I'm just going to test it and then go from there. So just put the plug in, snap the breaker on, make sure this is getting power, and there you go. Yay! These plugs, by the way, are not meant to be used in and out, so I would highly stress not to plug stuff in and out all the time. Obviously you can do it here and there, but I would not use this as a daily charger elsewhere and come back and plug it in at night. It's just not meant for that. If anything, just buy another one of these cables and swap it here. So every time you come in, you just pop it out like that. It works. I'm going to put the cover on. The cover looks like this. Comes with 4 little screws. Most satisfying part, wait for it. Oh yeah. I don't know why I love doing that. This is pretty nice, brushed metal. Because of this slight gap here, this just barely goes on. 4 screw holes for the plate. If you put it like this, you'll see them. If you put it like this, you will not. And they're flat heads as always. Keep that in mind on this. This is tight on the plug, but it's still loose. It is not loose on the plug. It's because the back plating is so far recessed. Anyhow, final product. Very excited to be done with this. Yay, done. Good job to me. Thank you. I know. It's all just plugged in. I'm just gonna do a couple minor little excess things. Even if this helped out one person somewhere, sometime, I'm cool with that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you out. Subscribe for more. I very much appreciate your support, truly. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.